1936. That was the year his beloved home country of Spain was ripped apart by a brutal civil war. One of the war's worst atrocities took the horror of modern warfare to a new extreme. In April 1937, a squadron of German aircraft who were supporting the Spanish fascists flattened the communist opposition-held town of Guernica with 5,000 bombs, massacring more than 1,600 civilians. It was the first time that Europe had suffered such ruthless, calculated terror bombing. Picasso's response was to create the most important painting of his life, and some think the most important painting of the 20th century, Guernica. Whenever people talk about this painting, they always start by telling that story of the incredibly black day in April 1937, when the Basque town of Guernica was bombed to smithereens. And we know that that was the starting point for Picasso. As soon as he heard the news, he was inspired to this frenzy of energy and creativity. And in less than 6 weeks, he managed to cover this enormous canvas measuring 30 square meters. But I think that the reason this is so resonant and has spoken to people for so many decades is because it's not specifically about Guernica. Picasso isn't just commemorating that one catastrophe. He's encapsulating a whole century of suffering. And the way that Picasso does that is by creating this massive mess of mangled, dismembered limbs, as if the bomb has actually dropped from the air and just gone off, just as we come in. Look, for example, up at that light bulb with its jagged flare, which feels like an explosion going off as we're looking. And here to the left is such a pitiful, heart-rending picture of a woman carrying the corpse of her dead child. And I find the most affecting detail of this is the way that Picasso has painted her face, because it's almost like in her grief, her entire identity is dissolving before our eyes. Look at her nostrils and her eyes that seem to be dripping right off her head. And this soft, soft feel of her flesh leads up to that terrifying image of her mouth with that piercing tongue, which just means that you can almost hear that incredibly shrill sound of a mother's total in-the-moment grief for her dead child. This is a reminder of the barbaric depths to which we can reach, and looking at it is horribly, horribly shocking. Guernica was first shown in the Spanish Pavilion at the 1937 Paris World Fair. This was a regular international exhibition of industry, culture, and art. But Picasso's pacifist outcry went almost unnoticed, because the event was overshadowed by the antagonistic posturing of Nazi Germany on one side and the Soviet Union on the other. But Guernica's timing was critical to its later success. As the world teetered on the edge of the Second World War, the painting was sent on a global tour in support of the fight against fascism in Spain. And when the world did descend into war, the painting came to symbolize the unprecedented carnage and horror that was inflicted on the innocent. The painting was moved more than 50 times before it was eventually returned here to Madrid. What's so amazing about seeing Guernica up close is that you get a real sense of how incredibly battered this painting really is. Because over the years, Guernica travelled the world umpteen times, and on each occasion that it was rolled up and shunted from one museum to another, the surface of the painting sustained just a tiny bit more damage. And today, you can make out all sorts of tiny tears and fractures and hairline cracks. Like, well, there's this 5mm cavity which is beneath the eye of a soldier down the bottom of the painting. But if you ask me, there's something quite pleasing about the fact that this devastating masterpiece about the effects of war has its own battle scars. Today, Guernica is still a powerful symbol. When there's an anti-war protest, you're likely to see images of Guernica among the banners and placards. And then there's the incident in 2003 at the United Nations, when Colin Powell presented the case for war against Iraq. Someone noticed that the press conference afterwards was due to be held in front of a tapestry replica of Guernica. The decision was taken to cover it up with a blue drape.